Hey, Minnesota Vikings fans, you are listening to the Purple People podcast. I'm Kyle West. We got Adam Carlson with me.
Yo.
We have the returning Kyle Smith. Welcome back.
Hello.
We
There he
have
is.
lots of Vikings football to talk about, but first, we need an episode number and a name.
We sure do. And you want me to do this, huh?
Of course, that's the job. They don't pay me for that.
All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to episode number 147 of the Purple People podcast. This one is titled Capital Wanes. We'll discuss why in a little bit. But first, the quick hits. The first quick hit is one that I'm excited about because listeners of the show know that I'm an offensive line guy. I like the offensive line. I'm pretty interested in it. Played it in high school. I like watching it. And one of the key members of our offensive line, Mr. John Sullivan, signed an extension to stay with the Vikings through the 2017 season. So I am pretty excited about that.
I believe he is the best player on the line, and so anytime you can continue on his tenure with the Vikings, of course I am excited for it. And John Sullivan is a great guy, deserving of any extension that the Vikings are willing to give to him. Glad to have him back on the team. Well, not that he ever left, but glad to see his tenure extended with the team.
Absolutely.
I can't wait.
Mm-hmm.
This is my favorite. This takes over what I talked about a couple weeks ago as my favorite signing. So keep Sully on the team another year.
Yep.
Fantastic move.
Kind of disappointed it was only for one extra year, but hey, you take what you can get.
I'm sure.
That's the way I see it.
I'm sure Rick has his reasons for that, right?
I don't know. You never know with that man. He's got his ways. He's got his ways. In former Vikings news, Aaron Henderson got a 1-year deal with the Jets. If you remember, Aaron Henderson had some problems with the law, and he also ended up bouncing around the league trying to find a spot. And I believe he was another man who was a part of a veteran combine who ended up actually getting a 1-year deal from the New York Jets.
I remember after his stint where he got in trouble, he did a little PR stuff for the Vikings, and he was doing stuff in the community trying to just build his name back up and build his reputation. But the fact that he got another chance is cool. And I'm all about second chances, so congrats for Aaron Henderson.
I think he's deserving of a second shot. Like I said, his brother EJ does a lot of good work for the Vikings still. And Aaron, like you said, yeah, whatever, he made some mistakes, but he seems to be wanting to at least try to remedy that. And hey, we'll see what he can do with the Jets.
Yeah, that Henderson family, they're good people.
Yep.
Another former Viking got signed as well. Former Vikings linebacker and special team ace Larry Dean has become a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, I believe Larry Dean has a Super Bowl ring from his time with the Seattle Seahawks, which I still always want to say Supersonics. which, But it's kind of fitting that Larry Dean is going back to work with the defense there in Tampa, since Mr. Leslie Frazier is down there.
I always liked Larry Dean when he was a Viking, but
Yeah.
Of course, a good guy. But one of those things where really does it make the Vikings any worse of a team with Larry Dean not on the roster, and does it make Tampa Bay any better having Larry Dean on the roster? I'm not really sure either way. I think
Absolutely.
I think we'll be fine without him. He's a great special teams guy, but he was kind of just a guy at the linebacker position for the team, and so full faith in Mike Zimmer. That,
his
we'll
major value was special teams.
Yep.
So I'm glad to see him getting a little bit more work too.
Mm-hmm.
The next one hits quite close to home because I've had some problems with alcohol in the past, and I saw that Jabari Price, when he was pulled over for a DWI back in December, had that charge reduced to a careless driving. And I'm not sure if there's going to be any other kind of repercussion from the team or the league at this point. We'll have to stay up to date on that. But I am glad that Jabari Price is not getting the entire book thrown at him, since he isn't a guy that's known for making a lot of trouble. And I hope that he can get his life back together, stop making the dumb mistakes, because I used to make these kind of mistakes more often than I'd like to admit.
And here's a really young developmental player, and you would hate to, just from a football perspective, to see his career hurt that early on from something that was avoidable. Like, you can avoid stuff like that. There's a number that NFL players can call. You can get a ride home. Like, they don't have to be out doing that. But let's just hope that the kid's able to, like you said, Adam, get it sorted out, get it worked out, and not make the same mistake again.
And hopefully the team doesn't look too hard on him because of all the legal problems that they've been dealing with lately, too. I understand the Vikings have an image that they want to try to maintain, and I know that they want to try to keep that image as squeaky clean as possible for now. But I don't think that cutting a guy like Jabari Price right now would be in the best interest of the team because of a friction like this.
And here's the thing that you gotta remember. We're talking about Jabari Price. He's 22.
Right.
22 years old, everyone. Keep that into perspective. When you were 22, I'm sure you made a lot of really dumb mistakes, too. And if you were to give as much money as what Jabari Price made to me when I was 22, I'm sure I'd have done a hell of a lot more stupid things. So no, that is not saying that what he did is acceptable or any of that. But I think that that's a situation where you want to, the Vikings as a team, you want to work with the kid and help to show him, his mistakes, help him learn from them so that he does not repeat them.
For sure. Now, it's mock draft season. It's in full force. You can't turn on the internet without seeing a mock draft somewhere.
I wish I could.
And when you think about mock drafts, there's one man you think of. The guy with the hairstyle from the 70s that looks like he's been locked in a smoke-filled dungeon for the last 30 years, Mr. Mel Kiper.
Are you not a Mel Kiper fan?
No, I like his work a lot, but that hairstyle, man.
You just went all out on Mel Kiper there, Adam.
None of those were insults.
The beast was unleashed from Adam to Kiper.
None of those were insults.
It sounded pretty insulty.
I loved hair in the 70s.
I'm going to tweet Mel Kiper and be like, Adam was talking so much shit about you this week.
Yeah, listen to this podcast.
Check us out on the Purple People podcast.
I'm legitimately going to do that now.
In his last mock, he has the Minnesota Vikings taking Michigan State cornerback Trey Waynes. And that is a name that's been linked to Minnesota for a while now. As a matter of fact, there have been articles out saying that Minnesota's kind of enamored with Mr. Waynes. Interesting.
After the Mike Wallace move, I don't see the glaring desperation. We absolutely need a wide receiver. Now, if a Devontae Parker is there, that's going to make the draft very interesting. It's going to be a long 10 minutes while we make a decision on the clock. But I feel he will be there by pick 11, and I feel like the Vikings should totally take him. Take Chicago last year, for example. Kyle Fuller. They took him early on in the draft. I believe he was the first or second corner taken last year. He's been nothing but amazing for them. And, corners, you can find him good in the draft, deep into the draft, but he by far, to my opinion, is the best corner prospect. And everybody said it. You've seen it if you followed us on the podcast page, or if you've seen Adam's stuff on the Viking Age. Him opposite Xavier Rhodes just seems just nasty. I think he'd be perfect for us.
It does. It's a natural fit. It really is. And there aren't that many players that I would actually call must-draft players in this draft class. There's a ton of talent. I mean, the depth in this draft class is really good. You can get a good player deep into the second, third, maybe even fourth round. But the premier players, there aren't as many as in previous drafts, in my opinion. I mean, you got Brandon Sheriff, you got Randy Gregory, you've got Shane Ray. You've got some guys that, they're going to be major players. But by the time Minnesota picks at 11, to be honest, I'm kind of hoping for a trade down.
Really?
I am.
Insert my last rant the last time I was on the podcast of trading Adrian Peterson and getting some draft picks.
Absolutely. If you're going to get extra picks, even if it's a second or a third or your fourth or something like that, this would be a great draft to do it. A great one.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I don't feel sorry to keep ranting, guys, but I don't. We all know if you're a realist, and I try to keep myself in reality and my bias out of this as much as possible. But we can't go every single year and keep double dipping and triple dipping
No.
into the first round. But Rick's got me all excited for that. I'm hoping it happens somehow again. Obviously, we don't need a quarterback, I don't think, in the first or second round this year. But just the idea has me salivating. But you're right. You know, anybody wants quality over quantity, but Slick Rick likes 10, I think, is the magic number. So I wouldn't be opposed if we traded down. I'd be really pissed off because I'd be at this draft party that I keep telling you guys about. But it's definitely not something I would ever say that he wouldn't do.
No, not at all. And I don't think that magic number is going to be around 10 anymore. I think they've accumulated enough young talent on the team that 10 isn't really the major number anymore. I think he'd be happy with 7 or 8 in this draft class. Just because of the sheer number of people that he's brought in the previous couple of years and some of the young talent that he still needs to see stuff from on the team. So I don't see him aiming for, 10, 11, 12 people in this year's draft class. Instead, I see him targeting a handful of top prospects and a couple guys to bring in and compete. That's what I see. But now we're on to Mr. Kyle West's favorite quick hit.
We are going to talk about Darren Sharper's bizarre plea bargain requirements briefly.
We are.
Briefly being the key word here.
Now, we all know that Darren Sharper has done some pretty bad things. He was convicted on several charges of I don't even really want to talk about it. You know what he's been charged with.
You Google it.
What he's been convicted
you can Google
of.
it.
Yeah, let's. We don't even need to name it. If you don't know, just Google Darren Sharper. It'll come up soon.
But he's had several restrictions being placed on him: GPS tracking, counseling, no alcohol. He can't go to a bar. He can't date on the internet, and he has to get a true approval from the court to travel more than 50 miles.
And this is after his sentence.
Yeah, this is after he serves his minimum of 9 years in prison.
Yeah, where he will go through all kinds of rehabilitation and stuff like that.
And if you think some of that stuff is weird, there's some awkward Clockwork Orange stuff going on that could be part of his post-prison life as well. Now, I've never heard of anything like this, so when I read it, it just blew my mind.
Yeah, me too.
But what they could do is they could attach sensors to Mr. Sharper's penis and put images up on a screen and measure his levels of arousal based on the images that were shown.
And it works apparently off the amount of blood pressure and blood flow. Who knew that such a thing exists? What an age we live in.
I learned something this week.
That is not something that you should ever have to learn.
No. And all it reminds me of is that scene from A Clockwork Orange when they got the guy's eyes held open. They're flashing all the images. And that's the only thing that can go into my head. And
how stupid is Darren Sharper? I mean, think of all the money he had to have. He played for what? The Packers, the Vikings, the Saints. Super Bowl ring with the Saints, right?
Right.
He goes on. He has the job working for the NFL Network. And he's just a bleeping moron.
Just reckless outside of work. But the worst part is, like we're not going to say, and we're not going to go into detail of his stuff. Like we said, Google it. But this wasn't one charge. This is multiple times. This guy is a predator.
Yeah.
He's a predator. He
has ruined a lot of people's lives.
And you know what? I'm not going to do the whole justice thing and guns blazing, but karma is a bitch.
Yeah.
And, it's going to come back. People don't take that sort of charge lightly when you go to prison. And if you're going to be there for a minimum of 9 years, he's going to have a rough stay in our judicial correction facilities. So,
and a lot of people,
I don't know.
A lot of people online are saying that he came off easy.
Absolutely.
He should have had. I don't know what the standard.
But I think
actually, he got off the technicality because he got several sentences of 7 to 10 years. But in something that I didn't know could happen, all of those sentences run at the same time. They don't accumulate.
That's weird.
The good part is for how severe these are, I did learn that the first thing that's come out right now is in one state, I believe in two others. So he might serve time for, say, Las Vegas, but he's still going to get tried in California or Arizona or wherever that happened at. So
But
he's
that'll all run at the same time. It'll be 9 years is what it looks like.
Really, I did not know
Yep.
that connected together from different states. I did not know it was
Yep.
possible. This is Law and Order on the Purple People podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
I didn't know this either. Trust me, I actually
That's
have a lawyer
crazy.
friend on Twitter
That's-
that I was talking to about all this. And I said
See,
I
this
said
one-
the exact same thing you did. I said, well, he's going to get 7 years here, maybe an 8, 9 there. And the guy's like, nope, they're all going to run together.
Exactly.
Okay,
That's what made me feel better about it.
show of hands, even though this is a podcast and no one can see that, but show of hands, who has a Darren Sharper jersey amongst the
Oh,
three
God,
of us?
no.
Anyone?
Nope,
Adam?
not this guy.
Guess what? I bought a Adrian Peterson jersey from my friend Paul, and in the package that he gave me, there was a friggin' Darren Sharper
Oh,
jersey.
no.
And he tossed it in there as a joke to be like, I don't want this, take it. So I have in my possession and it's like a nice, like stitched Darren Sharper jersey in like really good condition, but the hell if I can, I'm never gonna wear that. Jesus. You'd be a lowlife to wear a Darren Sharper jersey.
Did you say Adrian Peterson and Darren Sharper in the same package?
Yes, I did.
Okay, just checking.
Oh.
Wow, that is not a very popular package to receive.
Yeah, well, you know, I'm still happy to wear the Peterson jersey, but not Darren, no more Sharper.
All right, now we're into the meat and potatoes. Let's talk about the Vikings preseason schedule, which was released this week. The Vikings, luckily for their fans, not so good for the players because injuries do happen during the preseason. The Vikings will be playing in 5 preseason games this year because they will be a part of the Hall of Fame game in Canton, Ohio on August 9th.
Yeah. I am one of probably like 5 people on the entire internet that actually likes preseason football. So
yeah, I love it.
I am, Adam being the other one, I'm super excited to have 5 preseason games.
I think I was the only guy who named my favorite game of the season for the Vikings.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, you sure did. Wasn't it? You say it's the Cardinals last year?
Yeah.
2-Minute Teddy. We got to see 2-Minute Teddy for the first time.
And the Holy Roller.
I was like, you can't name a preseason game.
2-Minute Teddy and the Holy Roller? Come on.
Adam plays by his own set of rules. He's an outlaw.
I love it because the first taste of football that anyone's going to get, I remember 2 years ago, was visiting my wife. We're in Los Angeles. We're having vacation. And what happens in the hotel room? The Hall of Fame game comes on. So we parked it for a good hour. And I didn't care. I was just glad football was back. Yeah. But now Minnesota's going to be a part of Welcome to 2015 football. I love it. You know, Teddy's maybe going to take, one drive maybe down. That's it. Whatever. It's fine. It's just we're going to have the closest glimpse of football before anybody else.
Adrian is going to play the entire game as punishment. Zimmer's going to be like, get on the field. You play the entire game. I don't care. You bitch, you're cut. No, you're not.
You know what? He would actually love that. I'm sure he's pissed off from the last couple of years of having to sit the entire preseason. He would absolutely love that.
Can you imagine?
I'd love to see AP versus 3rd or 4th string linebackers too.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Could you imagine Adrian against like some 4th string guy that's not going to make the Pittsburgh team, just running him over in the middle of the field? That would be fantastic.
That'd be pretty sick.
Oh, that's funny.
Although, I guess we'll just have to wait and see if Adrian's even there on August 9th.
So what game are you guys looking forward to the most out of the 5?
One of those games should be circled. Well, there's a good reason to circle every game on this preseason schedule except for the one against the Titans. Sorry, Titans.
You're not excited to see Zach Mettenberger?
He's a poor man's Tom Brady, according to NFL.com.
I hope the poor guy didn't read that. How bad would you feel if someone called you the poor man's something something in whatever field you work in?
They could call me the poor man's whatever they want as long as it's attached to someone awesome.
Ugh.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know.
I think for me, week 3 we all know is the game where your players get the most playing time. Going to rest them on preseason week 4 before the first game. I like it, us being on the road against Dallas. Dallas was potent last year on offense. I think it'll be a good test. I think it'll show where we are. I think Zimmer's defense is going to give Tony Romo some trouble. And I don't know. It'll be a good test for us. It's a playoff team. They won a playoff game against a really good Detroit team last year. So if you had to pick me one right off the Vikings website that I'm looking at right now, I'd say us against Dallas in week 3.
Well, I like week 1 because I always love seeing coaches go up against their former teams. Leslie Frazier in Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay could have some interesting players going on there. Could be the first look at Jameis Winston. There's a lot of good reasons to be excited about that preseason week 1 game. That's on August 14th to 16th, somewhere in there. The exact date hasn't been set, but we got a little bit of flex scheduling going on. Then we got August 21st to 23rd in that range. The Oakland Raiders are going to come to town. Another good reason to be excited there. Just because it's Oakland.
Oakland's on the rise. I'm calling it right
they are.
now.
You're saving it for me to say it. The prodigal son returns to Minnesota.
Yeah.
Christian Ponder, we get to beat the shit out of Christian Ponder in preseason, guys. Mike Zimmer gets to be like, look, you know how incompetent this guy is. You've seen him in training camp, so just go out there and just... Audie Cole is going to pick him off like 4 times in a row. And
you stole the words right out of my mouth.
Pick 6 every time. Just every time. You know what? Now that I said that, Ponder will probably have like the best game of his career.
And it won't count for anything.
Yeah, it won't count because it's Ponder.
No,
earlier today, the Raiders signed Michael Crabtree, so they'll have another weapon for their receiving corps.
I'm telling you, don't sleep on the Raiders. They just keep adding talent. If they have a coach that knows what he's doing, a descendant Peyton Manning, a descendant Phillip Rivers, I mean, I'm telling you, they could be on the rise for that division. It could quickly turn around.
Who's their defensive stud that they have?
They have Khalil Mack from last year, and they also have Justin Tuck, former Giant, who was very, very good for them. So
good veteran presence. So
yeah, they are on the rise.
Oakland is legitimately trying to put together a team, so give them props for that.
And Dallas will be the true challenge of the preseason because, let's face it, the Hall of Fame game, although it's going to be good, and Pittsburgh's a good team, Pittsburgh has a lot of holes left after several of their players retired. Especially Troy Polamalu.
Shout out to Troy.
He was an amazing player. There's no questioning that man's heart.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite players in the NFL. So sad to see him go, but it was time for him to retire.
It was. It was. But Dallas will definitely be the one to watch, basically because week 3 of the preseason is the big game for the starters. You're going to see a lot of Teddy Bridgewater in that game. You're going to see a lot of Tony Romo. And it's that game that is kind of the highlight of the preseason. Everybody wants to see week 3. Week 4 is the garbage time game.
The Titans game.
This is when you bring in all the 3rd and 4th string guys and just have at it and see what they got.
I believe this is the same thing last year, too, because I just watched one of the promo videos for the Vikings preseason last year for Teddy, and it was against the Titans in Tennessee, and it was raining, and there was absolutely no one in the stands.
I remember that game.
No one in the stands. I mean, you could have been in the nosebleeds and walked down because half the concessions were already closed by halftime. So I don't know. That was really funny, but poor Tennessee. Gosh, they could pick on them like we used to pick on the Jaguars.
Yeah. No, we still pick on the Jaguars. F them.
You know what, though? When it comes down to that Week 4 game, I know it's not good football, but it is fun to watch, to try to see the guys who are battling it out for those final spots on the team. You can learn a lot from watching that game just on seeing guys who want it versus guys who don't. Like, who are your guys that want to make the team? You watch that Week 4 game versus the Titans, you find out who wants this roster spot.
And the guys from Week 4, they might be guys that barely fill in the 53, that don't get playing time a lot during games, or guys that just make the practice squad, or a situation where it's a guy fighting for a spot on the practice squad. These are all these guys' dreams, and they're working hard to get them, and it's fun watching them work so hard to try to achieve them. Such good times.
Lots of people want the preseason cut down from 4 games to 2 games, but I like it at 4. I think 4.
I think it's crap to cut it down. You need time to prep. And the only way you're gonna, it's just like playing any sport. The best way is muscle memory is to get out there and play. I know you run a risk of injury, but I mean the best way is just to have product on the field. 4 is the perfect formula. Keep it at 4. Don't change it to 2.
You get lots of good stuff done in camp and your scrimmages and stuff, but at some point, you really got to play live against another team. Even if it is basically a padded scrimmage for these guys, it's still against another team and another defense that you're not practicing against all the time. There's a lot to benefit from that a lot of, I think, casual people seem to overlook because the product isn't what you're used to seeing from like a regular NFL game, but it's super important, and you hear coaches talk about it, and coaches say that they want the 4 preseason games to stay, that they are important.
Absolutely. So now that we know approximately the dates of the preseason games, it's time to talk about our social media question of the week. And this one was fun, but kind of obvious, but it was exciting to see how people were going to talk about it.
You had some people overreact on Twitter this week.
I want to throw my 2 cents in at the very, very end and just piss everyone off at the end of this. So go ahead, let's get into this.
The social media question of the week was, what do you consider to be the biggest mistake in Vikings history? And boy, did we get some responses. A majority of the people on Facebook said that it was the Herschel Walker trade, and that
it's pretty
There's
obvious.
no denying that that's the answer that we expected to see the most.
Obvious choice is obvious for a reason.
Daryl Clausen said it was the Walker trade. How Jimmy Johnson snookered Mike Lynn into the worst trade in football. How about the next show? Who was the biggest dumbass the Vikings have had in their front office? We did have some fun answers, though.
Let's do that for next week. That would be great. We should.
Troy Thorenson, who is a really good guy, said getting Donovan McNabb. But he also said drafting Troy Williamson and Erasmus James.
Yeah, that hurt.
Both those were painful. Did you have any awesome responses on Twitter?
Most of it was extremely negative on Twitter for some reason. Like, I had people like, why did you guys even ask that? That's retarded. Herschel Walker. That was basically the feedback I got.
Awesome. No actual fun?
No. Legitimately, no one on Twitter had like an actual answer for us this week.
Because I figured there'd be some other good answers in there, like the little gap in the Bud Grant era when they tried to fill that in with another coach. There's a couple places where
tough to replace a legendary coach like Bud Grant. Like that, it rarely works when you have a coach like Bud Grant and then you have to replace him.
There were a couple other answers that were definitely acceptable. Getting Donovan McNabb was a pretty funny one.
Yeah. Although I understand. That didn't work out, but I can understand what they were at least thinking with it. Conceptually, that one was not as dumb as Herschel Walker trade.
I didn't like it when it happened. I still don't like it. But I understand why they kind of did it.
Yeah, I do too. It's like, I get it. There was a lockout. You had Christian Ponder, folks. We can look back at that and go, I know why we wanted Donovan.
It's crazy how the Vikings always plan to let these young quarterbacks sit for a little bit, and it never works.
Never, ever, ever.
No, it never works. I don't know why they even planned. They should just draft a quarterback and say, day one, you're starting.
Yeah.
You might as well. Because it's just not going to work. We also had Michael Keela say, not joining the AFL in 1960, but waiting for the NFL in 1961. Been jinxed ever since. Well, aside from 1969 when they won the national championship, but that's okay. I'm one of those guys that'll still count the 69 championship. Yeah. I know that I'm in the minority on that one, but hey, that's me.
I count it too. It's an important part of the Vikings' history. The Vikings count it too, Adam.
They should.
Yeah.
They definitely should. All right, so the draft, by the time we're recording this right now, it's 19 days away. I believe. No, 16 days. 16 days away. So, who do you think should be the Vikings' first round pick? You're sitting at 11. You can't trade. No phones are ringing.
Oh, can't trade. Well, you took away my answer.
So you're sitting there, and is there one prospect that just blows you away so much that he has to be the pick?
No, there's nobody, in my opinion, that absolutely blows me away. But when you say blows me away, somebody I think we could trade up and try to get.
Because it's hard at 11 because those kind of players will be off the board by then, mostly.
Yes, absolutely. That's what makes it so difficult. Between 1 through 6 or 7, all of the profound immediate starters, which I'm not saying that 7 through whatever aren't going to be starters, but immediate impact. Holy crap, they got that guy. I don't see a lot of that, but as far as drafting by position overall at their position, there's still a lot of good guys left. There's some non-sexy picks. You could fix the line either defensively or offensively, but I'm going to be cliche here. I'm going defense. We answered it with Teddy last year. I think we did a phenomenal job. Like I said earlier, with the Mike Wallace acquisition, look at people like Jarius Wright, Adam Thielen. Hopefully Cordero Patterson gets it together and has a good season. I think we're set at wide receiver. I don't know what we're going to do at running back depending on Adrian, but we did okay last year. Let's take Trey Waynes. I mean, the more of a badass defense that we have with the coach that we have, we're gonna be unstoppable. I'm telling you. Keep it up the way we are. Just keep adding, solid magnitude players like that, first round picks like that. We're gonna be amazing, an amazing, amazing defense. So, you want to ask Kyle Smith? I say we take a corner. Trey Waynes is, in my opinion, the best corner by far. So, that's who I would take, assuming he's still there.
That's true. He could go at that point.
So
now,
mock
I'm going to
drafts
throw a
have him
name
going
out
to
there
St. Louis.
that I haven't heard in a lot of mock drafts for the Vikings. I kind of want to see Bud Dupree. I know Elvin, quote, nickname Bud, Elvin Bud Dupree, isn't a name that you're hearing a lot this draft season, but he's a guy that is too talented just not to be selected. University of Kentucky defensive end. I know that defensive end is something that Minnesota just really treasures, and they want a guy to come in and compete for that job with Brian Robinson and to develop and to be able to play in and rotate and add to that NASCAR package. Elvin Dupree, to me, fits what the Vikings want to do with this team. So on draft day, when I filled out my mock draft that I just published, I believe this morning, I have the Vikings selecting Trey Waynes just based on the reported love that I've been hearing. But if I were to make the selection myself, if Elvin Bud Dupree is still on the board, it would be hard for me not to write that name down.
Well, I have a couple guys that I just kind of picked, just guys that I like at different positions that who knows if they'll be available or not at the spot the Vikings are picking. But these are the kind of ones that I like, and so you could just go, if they're available, these are the guys that I would take. So I would go with my favorite player in this year's draft, left tackle from Iowa. I've talked a lot about him, Brandon Sheriff. The guy is just an absolute mammoth road grader. He would be one hell of an upgrade for the Vikings line. He could play left tackle, or you could swing him into the vacated guard position that Charlie Johnson left now that he's no longer with the team. Or
Right.
he could play left tackle, you could move Khalil into the guard. So you would have flexibility where you could figure that out. I'm a huge fan of his. Honestly, Brandon is a top 5 pick. If he slides to Minnesota at 11, whoa, we just won the lottery.
He will not get past the Giants. If something happens and he starts to slide, he's not getting past the Giants.
I don't know what could possibly happen for him to slide, but I would love to have Brandon on the Vikings, but probably not going to happen. Wide receiver, like I said, I don't know how much of a need it is, but if Devontae Parker is available, of course you would love to have him back. Him and Teddy, they played together in college. I think Devontae would be a good signing for the team. It would just be fun to have him and Teddy back together. So I think that'd be interesting. The tight end from Minnesota, Golden Gopher, Max Williams. I am a big, big fan of his. I know tight end is not an area of need for the Vikings at all, but Max Williams is outstanding player. Him and Kyle Rudolph in the red zone together would be whoa. That is like one hell of a combination of targets for Teddy to have right out there. So I would love to have him in Minnesota as well. And then we were talking about him earlier in the show. Trey Waynes, for all the reasons that you guys mentioned. I think out of the guys that I have said, he would probably be the most likely for the Vikings to pick at 11, pairing another big physical corner up with Xavier Rhodes. That sounds exactly like what Mike Zimmer would want to have for this defense. So I think Trey Waynes would probably be the most logical destination for the Vikings at 11, assuming he is available.
And it looks like, from what I've been seeing and what I've been reading on mocks, which, as we know, mocks are nothing to take serious. They're just there to start discussions and get to know the players a little better.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm guessing that the best player available, according to most people, will be Trey Waynes. And that is why this whole podcast is named after that gentleman.
Capital Waynes.
Absolutely. One guy that wasn't mentioned that I think is actually a better prospect than Amari Cooper or even Devontae Parker. I really like Kevin White. I like what he brings to the team. He's so inexperienced and raw, but he's got the size and talent. The problem is I don't know if Minnesota wants to bring in another guy they're going to have to work with to develop at a wide receiver with how much they've had to work on some of the other guys. I mean, he's listed as 6'3", played his college ball at West Virginia, 212 pounds, just physical, strong wide receiver, can go up and get the ball. If the Vikings do take a wide receiver, I hope it's Kevin White, but I have a feeling that he is going to go early, and by early I mean Oakland early.
Yeah,
I was just gonna say that if you watch his highlights, you can just chuck it up, kind of like Stafford does to Megatron. He's not that big, but that's what it reminds you of. He's a great deep threat. He's good in the red zone for a fade. He's not going to make it outside of the top 8, if you ask me. By Chicago, with Brandon Marshall exiting, I guarantee you Kevin White will be gone, because I believe, and most of the mocks that I've read, it's either Amari Cooper or Kevin White at number 1. But if he somehow slipped to 11, Minnesota would be foolish not to take him.
He reminds me of Mike Evans.
Yes.
And I think Mike Evans was criminally overlooked this year just because of the explosive plays of Odell Beckham Jr.
Mm-hmm.
And I also believe he was overlooked because he plays in Tampa. Let's be honest.
Yeah, ain't nobody really watching highlights from Tampa from last season, but you're
Mike
right.
Glennon.
Huh. Didn't he end up in? Where did he end up?
I just know him
Cleveland?
because he was from NC State.
Mike Glennon, he's still in Tampa.
I thought
He's
he ended
still
up
in Tampa.
Cleveland.
Hence why they're going to go after Jameis Winston.
Oh.
Yeah, I think Winston's going to be the guy, and they're going to keep Glennon as a backup. That's the way she's looking right now. I think you're thinking of Josh McCown.
Oh, yes, I was. Thank you, Adam.
Which he wasn't he with the Bucs last year?
Yep.
Yes.
That's it.
They
That's why.
really overpaid for him after some good games with the Bears.
Because that's what bad teams do.
They do. Free agency, they overpay to try to fill holes.
That's why we tell people all the time on the show is that don't expect the Vikings to go out and spend mega money for the top free agent guys. Because most of the time, it doesn't work out.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have a bold statement from Mr. Kyle Smith?
We do. This week, sorry about the, let's put it for a lack of better terms. I fell asleep last week, fans, if you aren't there, so I apologize. It's midnight network day, so give me a break.
Hey, it happens.
Yeah, that's why we have 3 of us. This is great. But I'm going to make the bold statement. After going over our roster, I'm going to make the bold statement, and bear with me here, because it can go to 8-8 to be a quote-unquote, I'm doing my Dr. Evil parentheses here, winning season, but I'm making the bold statement that the Vikings are going to have a winning season this year. And yeah, you can call me cheap. This is a cheap one. It's right before the draft. We don't have that much to talk about, so I had to rack my brain. But 7-9, rookie campaign from Teddy, another year from Mike Zimmer, more momentum building. We're going to have an extra preseason game to get ready. I don't see why we can't come out of this season 8-8 or better. And looking at the schedule that we have, I'm not going to say that we're not facing good teams. We're facing a lot of good teams on the rise. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
St. Louis. St. Louis defense, phenomenal. I know we blew them out last year. I honestly believe it was because it was the first part of the season. They played some really good ball at the end of the year. St. Louis will be a challenge. New York. I know they've been an afterthought for a while. I think Eli Manning's going to try to give it one last run. Tom Coughlin's job potentially is on the line. San Diego, same thing with Phillip Rivers. He's got a couple more years left in him. And these are all home games that I've mentioned so far. So these teams are going to be on the road. They're going to want to make a statement. The road is what scares me, even though I think we had a better record on the road last year, maybe. I'm not sure. Have to look back. But road games, besides our division, Arizona, playoff team, not to be messed with, especially a healthy Carson Palmer, potentially could win there. San Francisco, I feel like we'll win that game. They've got a new head coach. They've lost a lot of good players, especially on the defensive side, which they were known for. Denver, I've already made this in one of my other podcasts here. Peyton Manning, I love him to death. He's a Hall of Famer for sure. He's not the same. He's going to be on the down. He's on the decline right now. Still is probably better than 20 other quarterbacks in the NFL, but well, I digress. The last two games to watch this year. When we play Oakland on the road, I said it earlier today, say it again. Oakland is on the rise. They got a quarterback now. He's not going to blow you out of the water. He's not Tom Brady, but he is as competent, if not better, some would say, than Teddy Bridgewater. Watch out for Oakland. They have weapons now. They're probably going to add, along with Michael Crabtree, another receiver first round of the draft. Probably the best wide receiver, quote-unquote, prospect out of the draft at number 4. And last but not least, Atlanta. I don't know what happened to Atlanta. They were a dumpster fire last year. But they got Dan Quinn from Seattle. They're going to be awesome. I'm telling you right now, if they can turn the defense around. And Matt Ryan is a quarterback. He's one of those guys that always goes under the radar. He's a fantastic quarterback. So we have good challenges. I know I did a lot of props to other teams, but based on the schedule, based on us coming back with Teddy year 2, Zimmer year 2, I think we're going to add a lot of good defensive prospects this year in the draft. There's no reason why we shouldn't go 8-8. Bold statement. Boom. What do you guys think?
I think it's really interesting that Minnesota is playing the Raiders in the preseason and then face them again during the regular season. You don't see that very often.
That's a good point. I didn't notice that till you just said it.
But I wish that Raiders game was at home because I would definitely go to that one. But I think that you're right. I think this Minnesota team has a good chance at having a winning record and even being in the fight for a playoff berth. I'm not going to go as far as enough to say that they're going to compete for the division title very closely. I love the Vikings, but I need to see a little more from them to make a statement like that. But I don't think that 9 wins is that unreasonable to think of as a goal.
And you know what I've read a lot of over NFL.com? If you guys have listened, anybody that's listening to the podcast, if you listen to me, I do a lot of searching on NFL.com. I'll dig. The Vikings have been labeled as the frisky team, one of the frisky teams of the NFC, which is a good title to have because I think we're not rebuilding anymore. We're on the rise. We're trying to find those pieces, and once we've got a couple already. Once we find more, now it's going to be how you piece them together. But we have been labeled by more than a few writers for NFL.com as the frisky team, one of those teams you wouldn't expect to come in and give you such a fight or even beat you. But I think that's a good title to have. I think that's the perfect label for us at this very moment in time. Now, depending on where we go in the draft, depending on injuries, blah blah blah, that'll be that's light years away in a couple months, but. I think that's a pretty good title to have. It'll definitely give people that you don't sleep on Minnesota, especially if you're coming to our house because we're very good at home. So
I know my cat loves Friskies, so it must be good, right?
Boom. God, we've covered everything this episode.
We sure have, and we're still
Seattle
getting closer
Supersonics.
to the draft. Next, well, we haven't covered any 450 splashes or anything yet, so
I wanted to, but Adam wouldn't let me.
Yet.
Oh, shit. I know what I forgot. Oh, and here, let's do a quick hit completely out of order. I have word that someone has a birthday coming up, and it might be Adam Carlson, and it might be on Wednesday.
What?
Yes, I believe so. So happy birthday, Adam.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I already
That's
went on
fantastic.
Facebook and turned off my notifications, so I won't
You
get
are
any
so
messages.
smart. I do that every single year.
That's
Oh, hey,
I have
we haven't talked in 363 days, but happy birthday.
Right.
well, I have insider information, Adam.
You must, because I don't know where you got this information.
I am like
Now,
I'm like Adam Schefter when it comes to shit.
I know a lady never tells, but how old are you going to be?
Because April 15th is Adrian Peterson Day, not Adam Carlson Day.
No, it's Adam Carlson Day around here.
I'm going to be 35 years old.
Oh, well, happy early 35th, everybody. By the time this comes out, I'm sure we'll be celebrating and everybody will be listening on your birthday. So happy birthday, everybody.
So be
Say it
sure
to
to,
happy,
be sure
go
to
ahead.
tweet Adam.
I'm always the guy to plug, or go to the Viking Age and get his views up, thevikingage.com.
Or
Have the fan-sided app, it's on there.
If you guys want to wish me a happy birthday without actually doing it, send me a picture of you giving me the middle finger at MN Viking Zombie. Give me the Walking Dead salute, the Norman Reedus salute, and I'll appreciate it.
Oh, it's fantastic.
undeadwalking.com, right? You wish Adam a happy birthday on undeadwalking.com as well.
That's a good place too. I like it. But we'll be back next week with some more draft talk. Hopefully another question, one that can get a little bit more of a variation of answers.
Face it, we're going to talk about Adrian for 2 hours next week, aren't we?
You know what? I hope it is, because that'll be the last time, hopefully, we do.
It won't be.
I know.
Because
What
nothing's
if I
gonna...
told you that I already know the question for next week?
Well, you're the one that does the question, so you ought to.
That's true.
Yeah.
But the question for next week, if you want to watch for it on social media, which Minnesota Vikings draft class has disappointed you the most as a fan? You may have to do a little digging on that one, and
You guys got a week to do your homework.
I already know my answer for this. But we'll save that next week.
absolutely. In the meantime, be sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. Purple People Podcast on Facebook, at Purple People Pod on the Twitter. Check us out on iTunes, on Stitcher. Pretty much anywhere you want to find us. Podomatic, we're available too, if you ever heard of that.
I forgot. Are we still on that?
We are.
Wow. Wow, that brings back memories.
I actually used that program to get everything up to those other sites. So, all in all, we just did dust in the wind, I guess.
Podomatic.
In the meantime, stay classy, Minnesota.